The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Keep your mission on your mind and your mind on your mission. This is Mission Minded with Michael Coleman.
Ooh, super excited about our show today on Mission Minded. I'm Tony Kurre along with Michael Coleman. He's the CEO of the Montgomery Area Food Bank. They cover 35 counties in the great state of Alabama. They also help out with Feeding America. They do wonderful work down there. You may know Michael also from right here in Birmingham from the Jimmy Hill Mission. And this is a business show. We talk about non-for-profits. We did an email show last week, info@tonykurreradio.net. And thanks to the thousands of folks who have downloaded the TKR app. We're a classic rock station. We're now 14 shows strong. This is one of our best shows, one of my most enjoyable shows. And I always feel good after talking to Michael because he's a smart man. Today, I'm going to learn something because as a small business owner myself, I can learn some things from him. It is March Madness, Michael. First of all, how you doing? How's your bracket look? Everything good?
Well, we won't talk about it now.
Yeah.
I always go into these things knowing it's not going to end well.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to stay topical here, and I know there is some madness in every business. We have certainly talked about everything from the type of bosses we have to toxic relationships, the toxic workplace. We've talked about how a business can hum and drum and just blow dry and just fantastically outperform themselves. And then I was talking about spring cleaning. Spring is already started when this show starts to air. And so I wanted to get the inside of your brain about the things that you do as a manager, as a CEO, as a business owner, to keep the madness out and to keep the spring cleaning, to keep your side of the street clean so your business can absolutely hum at the highest level of productivity possible. And I was wondering if you'd share some of those ideas with us today.
Yeah, sure. It's always a healthy time. So if you just really look at, hey, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to check every inch of my house, whether it's the attic, whether it's the closets, and I'm going to get all that junk on, and I'm just going to reevaluate it. We go through this reevaluation process to go, do I really need this? Oh, here's something. I hadn't seen it in 5 years. Huh. There's lots of people out there that will tell you, hey, if you hadn't missed it, why are you holding on to it? Yes. Some people just can't let things go. And I'm not like that. I'm always looking to, hey, if I don't need it, I want to clean that junk out. And so if you look at that from a business perspective, you just look at every aspect of your business, and it could be an in-depth look. It could be something you do. It could be something that you do in conjunction with your team, depending on whatever level of management you have, or whether you just do this by yourself. And I really think it's just really important to not think, okay, well, this department or this is really working well, so you don't touch it, you don't ever mess with it, like it's successful. And I always think that's a huge mistake, because what we begin to do is just to think, okay, well, that standard, I'm okay with that, whatever it is, and we don't look for more ways to be efficient. We don't look for what about this employee's morale? What about, how are they doing as a person? So you've got two elements. You've got the business part, but you've got the person who's taking care of that department or working in that department. And so not only do you need to understand the health of your business for effectively moving forward, but you need to understand the health, both mentally and physical health of those that you've entrusted to your business and to help you make money.
You have spoken a lot about mental health of employees, and I think you are so ahead of the curve here, because I think with COVID and everything that we've just been through over the last 3 or 4 years, it is so important. Mental health is a crisis in this country, not only for people of our age, but certainly youngsters who are getting into the workforce. Talk more about that a little bit, because I think if you want to go back to the 50s and 60s, maybe the 70s, hey, listen, I've got your ass for 5 hours. I got you for 8 hours a day. You're going to work, and I want to hear about your family life. I don't want to hear about your issues. I've only got you 40 hours a week. You're going to give me your best 40 hours, now go home. It's just not like that, and it can't be like that anymore.
That's right. I learned this lesson a long time ago. I may have shared this story, but there was a full bird colonel named Colonel Lennox, Robert Lennox. I was his adjutant. And if you're not familiar with military, it's like a big HR director. And But he was a man. He was a brilliant man. His brother at the time was a 3-star general that ran West Point, the West Point Academy. He had an MBA from Stanford. I mean, this guy was brilliant. But his kids, because I was prior enlisted, prior to becoming an officer, his kids and my kids were roughly the same age, and we'd be out there, and I could walk up to him, and of course I responded to him, sir, yes, sir, but it was a relaxed feeling that I had because he was the kind of person that would make you feel relaxed. He was welcoming. He was kind. Now, he was serious about his business, but he was so humble, and I'll tell you the impact it had too. One time I worked for him for about a year, about 13, 14 months, and then I went to another assignment. But during that time there, he yelled at me one time, and it bothered me. Only not that I got yelled at, because I get yelled at all the time in the military, but it was him yelling, and I just had so much respect for him. I was upset that I had failed him and that I had disappointed him. And that's because what happens when you're open with employees is you build loyalty. I mean, I would have run through a wall for that guy.
Yep.
I would have done anything for that guy because of the relationship that he had built with me. But he was out 10 minutes and he called me. This is when cell phones were pretty new, but he called me from the road and said, "Hey, Michael, I shouldn't have yelled at you. I'm sorry."
Wow.
And I was like, "Hey, sir, that's, it's all good. I just felt like, what? Don't do it. Almost made me feel uncomfortable. Like,
yeah.
You don't have to apologize to me. I get it." And, but I will tell you this, the lowest ranking guy one time in one of the batteries had met him. I mean, this guy was like a PFC or something, but this guy never forgot a name. And so he would talk about his wife was sick, and Colonel Lennox ran into that soldier in the commissary, called out his wife by name. Let's just say it's Sarah. And he said, "Hey, sir." And he goes, "Hey, how is Sarah doing?" But the fact that he remembered that made that soldier feel so special. Wow. So I now when I'm walking through the warehouse and I'm seeing, we have both inmates who work on work release here, and we have employees who work here. And I do my best to take the time to learn their names. And when I look at them, I can say, "Hey, Tony, how's it going?" Or anything that I know about them, rather than just saying, "Hey," because the personalization of the relationship, it builds loyalty. When you have an open door and people feel like, "Oh, I've got something that's really bothering me," and Michael cares about that, and I can go to him, I'm telling you, it can bridge the gap from an employee saying, "Hey, if I can make $1,000 more an hour, $1,000 more a year, I would leave this place." But if you build loyalty, it takes a lot more than $1,000 to pull somebody away from.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes more effort. It takes intentionality. Those things don't happen by accident. You have to intentionally say, "I want to go to that person. I want to look them in the eye. I want to recognize them by their name. I want to know how their life is going. And I want to tell them face to face that I value them and appreciate them." You are storing up treasures in their heart that really will save you a lot of dollars on nothing. Now, I don't do it for that reason. I do it because I genuinely care. But I'm just telling you, there's a world of difference between passing by people in the hallway and saying hi versus, "Hi, Jim. How's it going? How's your wife? What'd you do this week?" And just taking just a little bit of interest in their life. And boy, I really recommend that.
He is Michael Coleman. He is the CEO of the Montgomery Area Food Bank. They do wonderful work in the great state of Alabama, 35 counties they cover. And of course, helping out Feeding America, mafb.org. If you could help out anytime and do that through Tony Kurre Radio or through their site, we would absolutely love that. We're talking about March Madness, keeping the madness out of the workplace, and maybe a little spring cleaning. I think we all like to tidy up just a little bit as we get ready for the spring and summer months with spring breaks and summer vacations and things like that. Share another little secret you got with me, some of the things you've done to run a tight ship wherever you are.
Yeah, so I've got some things that I can discuss in terms of just improving your productivity. But before I jump off the employee bandwagon, because you really need to think about the value of an employee who comes to work with a pep in their step, who's like, this is my business. In other words, they're taking ownership, and because they're loyal to you, they really want this company to be successful. They're taking pride in what they do. And I hear so many people talk about that aspect of the workforce is just gone. It's just so hard to find somebody, and that's true. But so much of it is leaders are not taking the time to develop that. So you say, well, I don't have all this time. I don't have all this money. But there's just so many little things you can do to show that they value. So I'll toss a couple of those out. I've had, so we start here at 6:00 in the morning. And because our agencies come pick up food from us starting at 7:00. So our warehouse workers have to open up the operational and get all that ready. But I've had other people that go, hey, I can't come at 6:00. If I have to be here at 6:00, I have to get my child off to school, or I have to pick my child up from school. So I have totally flexible work hours for special cases. And now, is it true that you could risk some people getting upset, like, why do I have to be here at 6 and they don't have to be here at 6? But we have certain positions. If I have somebody doing community outreach, it doesn't make sense for them to be at 6:00, because who they're going to outreach to at 6? It's not. So I don't have a one-size-fits-all approach. I create flexibility that accommodates people's schedules as much as possible. They're still putting in the same amount of hours, but when I have found, especially with upper management, to give them more flexibility, what I find is that I have people working in the evenings if they don't get their work done, as opposed to the hourly worker who clocks out and he says, I'm done. The people that I'm giving the flexibility to are so appreciative. You see them working at night and on weekends on their own time, because all of a sudden they value their job, they value their company, they value their boss. And so they're working extra hard, and you can see it because you get emails at night, or you get emails. Now, not that I'm asking them to do that. It's just, that's just what motivated people do. They go the extra mile, and you don't have to ask them to do it. They just do it because they take pride. And so just having a little bit of flexibility, and sometimes is that, there may be something I want to deal with at 6:00 in the morning, but my HR doesn't come in until 8. So it's a little bit of an inconvenience, but she's able to take her kids to school, and that matters to her. And if I wouldn't let her do that, she wouldn't be working here.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. I've talked about this before about, there's just so many little ways to recognize employees. You'd be amazed. Somebody suggested this to me, and I actually did this. Now, I haven't done that in this position, but you kind of get everybody, you ask them, what's your favorite candy? And so they tell you, okay, let's say it's a king size pack of peanut M&Ms, or just a pack of just peanut M&Ms. And so when that person's done a good job, or I just want to say, I appreciate you, I go get a pack of M, or next, I'm at the store, I get a pack of king size M&Ms, and I just put a little Post-it note on it that says, thank you. I'm really glad you're here.
Nice.
It cost $1.50, and just a handwritten note. Takes me a little bit of time, but they never forget it.
Yep.
They never forget it. And so those are the kind of little things that when you come and sit down at your desk, and here's a little note that your boss is saying, it's not that big of a deal in terms of what it cost you, but it's like you gave them a huge raise, because you just lifted up their self-worth, their self-esteem, and you said they're appreciated, they're valued, and that's something we all want. So those are some little things that you can do to say, it's not big initiatives. It's not over the top, we got to start another program or whatever. It's just really just a little extra, and that just a tidying up kind of things. It's just the the men on the pillow kind of approach.
Michael Coleman for the Montgomery Area Food Bank, mafb.org. You can send your email questions at info@TonyCurryRadio.net. We're talking about March Madness, keeping the madness out of the workplace, and also some spring cleaning. And I just found an email here. I was going through some things while you were talking about your last question here. Elena in Hoover, this is perfect. She wants to know about workplace relationships. She wants to know what's your deal? What's your rule on workplace relationships? I know in most workplaces you're not allowed to have workplace relationships, but when you've got 12 guys and 12 girls working together for 9 hours a day, chances are something's going to happen. What's your thoughts on workplace relationships? Because I've been in a lot of situations where it's all good when we're getting along, but when things aren't going so well, it gets a little uncomfortable, and that could be some spring cleaning in the making.
Well, this is not going to surprise you, but I have a story about that.
Oh, good. Oh, so I love your stories. Good.
So I had a male and female coworker who came together and started dating. And
was it allowed in your workplace?
At the time, yes.
Okay.
I mean, there was no policy against it.
Okay.
But this was the very first organization, very first nonprofit that I had started. So they came in, they expressed to me that they wanted to date. And I said, okay, now everything's great now. What happens when you break up? And I mean, I just had the conversation with them. What happens when you break up? And they're like, well, we don't know. And I said, well, here's what potentially could happen. Is that because you can't get along or because there's tension, because very few breakups just end amicably and you're still friends, especially when you're with each other all the time and the other one starts dating and the other one gets jealous. Mm-hmm. I said the challenge is now it changes the entire dynamic of the workforce, and there's tension there and people take sides. And guess what? That's exactly what happened. And I ended up having to fire one of them. Oh, no. Because he could not get over her. She wanted to move on. He could not get over it and was obsessively texting and calling her and stayed up so late one night that he had to call in the next day sick. Wow. And he had a vital task to do that he didn't get done. So I ended up having to fire him. And now, having said all that, it's not in our rule, it's not in our policies right now to this day where it's expressly prohibited. But what is expressly prohibited is any kind of shows of affection, any kind of things like that where there's any kind of like people hanging out in each other's office. And I get that sometimes. Guys will come in from the warehouse. They got to do a task. They're in there talking to a girl. Mm-hmm. They end up taking 15 minutes to do this task. Now they're wasting time. And so it's not necessarily about a relationship. It's about, hey, you're losing productivity and we're not paying you to do all this. The truth of the matter is I don't even know that it's legal that I could prohibit people from dating. Be honest with you, it's been so long since I've looked at the law on that. There may be state laws that vary on that. I don't think there's a federal law, but just as a practice, I would not encourage it because it rarely goes well. And I even say that about having family members work for you because it inevitably will become a time where you have to correct, and then you've got the personal relationship feelings versus the professional feelings, and those two just don't track right along. So it's full of opportunity to really go bad, but I just don't know that you can outright prohibit it.
I've been working as long as you have. I've been working since I was 12 years old. I've never seen a workforce relationship work. I never have. Now I've seen situations where you're Kentucky Fried Chicken, for God's sakes. You're only going to be working there for a year or two, and I get it. But if you're in a career type of business where you're going to be with this person, I mean, just think about it. If you broke up with your girlfriend, would you want to see her for 8 hours every day, 5 days a week? I mean, just think about the ramifications, and then you're bringing in another person. It doesn't. And Michael, I've seen situations where husband and wives have gotten together and worked together. And,
Sure.
and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There's a reason why we need to be apart a little bit to make relationships work. But I've never seen a situation. And listen, I was in the heydays of radio where it was all out, man. I mean, anything went. If you weren't hanging out with a saleswoman, we had five. When I first got to town, we had five. You talked about diversification in our last show. We had five saleswomen selling a classic rock station. They were getting after it. And they were a blast. And of course, we had an all-male staff, so you could just imagine what kind of fun came from that. But I just don't see it, and it's just one of those situations where you just have to be super, super careful. It also causes something else that we talked about, the toxic workplace. It causes a lot of rumors. I mean, it really does because. Go ahead.
Yeah, it is the boss's responsibility. So I don't know that you can outlaw relationships, because sometimes people aren't after relationships. It just happens. You're with somebody all this time and you develop feelings for them. But you can control the environment and the culture. And when you see toxic behavior that comes out of a relationship, whether they're in a romantic relationship, a friend relationship, whatever it is, you can then put a stop to that. But ultimately, like I said, it ends bad. It ends up with you either having to fire somebody or somebody having to leave for the peace of others. But there's all sorts of turmoil that undergo an organization. Organizations are tough to run anyway, with all the differing personalities and all the typical bickering that goes on. And the dynamic of having a relationship, boy, it's not just what it does to those two employees, but everybody around them.
Michael Coleman is the CEO of the Montgomery Area Food Bank, MAFB. Go check out their website. They do wonderful work serving 35 counties. We got a new show starting here in the next few weeks that we're really excited about. You'll hear that on Tony Curre Radio, and I'm sure it'll be just as successful as Mission Minded, which of course you can hear on any podcast you listen to. Just go out to your favorite podcast platform. We're available everywhere. You can find Mission Minded with Michael Coleman and Tony Curre here on Tony Curre Radio. We were talking about spring cleaning. We're talking about ways to help your business be more productive. You are a very compassionate individual with what people have on the outside of the business walls. What's your stance on taking work home? I know a lot of bosses are like, it's 5 o'clock. Don't even think about the place while you're gone. See you Monday at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., whatever it is. In some cases, my business, for example, it's 24 hours a day. I can't turn it off. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I can't get away from it. But if I go off there at 3 o'clock, I'm in here working on it. And I imagine when you're walking the life of a non-for-profit CEO, you, in a sense, you got to take some of your work home with you. And then you're talking about maybe nurses, doctors who cannot shut it off. You're either on call or you're dealing with tragedy all day. Can you talk about taking work home with you, maybe at your level? And is it healthy? Is it good to take it home to get ahead a little bit? Do you make your employees just shut it down? What do you do?
Well, ideally, I am a do as I say, not as I do in this area. And that is, I tell people, don't take it home.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I do. Because I also love the service, the nonprofit arena. I love serving people in need and making a difference. And so I just don't put that down when I walk out the door. But I'll tell you, this kind of goes back to the productivity area, is if I have somebody who's going home every single night and they're stressed, number one, I've got to eliminate that. I do not want an employee who's going home stressed every night, because that employee is not going to be with me long. Either they're going to break down, or they're going to become not as functional at work. They're not going to be as functional at home. They're just not going to be what I believe they should be. And so every time I have somebody that I kind of feel like is taking work home, or I'm seeing a bunch of emails at night, I always ask the question, why is that? Okay, well, if I talk to that employee and I'm like, hey, I know you've been doing a lot of work from home, talk to me about that. Do you feel like you don't have enough time in the day? And so I look at what I've stacked on top of a person. And the truth of the matter is, sometimes we do stack, even somebody who is productive, we've stacked more work on them than can be handled in an 8-hour period. So they're forced to go home. And that's kind of the old school thinking, like, hey, whatever it takes, I'm paying you a higher salary. If you got to take it home, fine. You got to stay in the office, fine, but you're just going to get all this work done. I think that's counterproductive. I do understand that some days you have about 8 hours of work, you have a full day, and for whatever reason your day gets interrupted and you're having to handle 3 hours worth of that, and you're like, no, I have deadlines on this, so I'm going to have to go home and take that. Those are the exceptions. In upper level management or people who are making higher salaries, that just comes with the territory. You're going to have days where you got to take stuff home if you're taking pride in what you do. But if it's a regular thing, I've either given that person too much work, or I've not given them enough help, or that person is incredibly unproductive during the day. And so what I want to do is I want to find out where the break is, because that's not, so I talk to that person, I ask them, tell me what's taking you so, is it, do you need more tools? Do you need more software solutions? Is it that you need more people? Tell me where I can help lift some of this burden off of you. But sometimes I find out that it's just, hey, they do a lot of talking during the day. They're up and down from their desk. They're chit-chatting. They're doing this. They're focused on things they shouldn't necessarily be focused on. And so that's another problem that I'll sit down and say, I don't want you taking your work home, so I'm going to have to make sure that you're more focused during the day. Mm-hmm. So it's not if I take home too much work, it means that the boss is giving me too much work necessarily. Could be. But lots of times it's because the employee's not managing their time effectively versus the boss is loading them down. So if you're giving somebody too much work and you're like, no, they're a hard worker, they just got too much to do, well, then I think you have one or two choices to make. Either you take that load off of them and find another, like just say, hey, I can't squeeze any more juice out of this person. So whatever productivity I'm sacrificing, I'm willing to sacrifice it for the sake of that person. Or you invest the dollars and to hire them an assistant or help of some kind to be able to pick up that slack. But I think it's a bad business model to load more on people and then till they break, because eventually they will. Now, you might have people that pound it out for 10 years. Yep. But I think if you were able to look at people who keep their head down and work, when you look at total productivity, I've just never seen somebody like that who also had a healthy disposition. You may have those who hate the world and they just keep their head down and they don't want to talk to anybody. They don't want any relationships. They just pound through their work and then they go home. That's not really the employee I want. I would rather the employee stop for a few minutes, build a little relationship, let me know that what's going on in their life. I want to project to them that I care about what's going on in their life, and have that person, because that same person is going to be the one interacting with our customers, interacting with other people. So, there's just so many different dynamics to get into the relationship part as to how it affects productivity, how it affects all the things that we're talking about. And the last thing I'll tell you, let's throw in this, if you really want to do something productive in a short amount of time, I would list out all your key tasks. And I would make sure that I looked at the metrics to determine how successful, in other words, I see this going on. How do I know what's going on is successful? Yeah. So if I'm making 10 widgets a day, I go, okay, that's what I'm making. Is that good? Is it not good? How do you've got to be able to measure. So you either have to have an industry standard, you either have to have a goal, you have to have whatever it is, but there needs to be something that you're able to look at the results and compare it to where you are and be able to determine, is this good or is this bad? And lots of times we say, hey, the boss says, well, how many did you produce today? Well, I produced 10 widgets. And he goes, okay, good, but that's good based on what? Yeah. Is it based on your orders? Is it based on just whatever? So lots of times in businesses, or especially like in the nonprofit world, smaller, we do not get in and set clear metrics, but your employees would value that. If you tell an employee, I need you to do these things every week, and and they say, okay, well, I did them and I've got 30 of them. They need to know whether that's good or whether it's not good. They need to know what are their goals. You need to stretch them and say, well, if you can easily make 30, this week maybe we want to make 35. Again, not stretching them beyond their ability, but stretching them to be able to help them accomplish as much as what you're paying them to accomplish. But they won't know that if they don't have something to compare it to determine whether they're doing well or not. So in your spring cleaning time, just sit down and go, okay, I've got 5 key things my business does. Do I have some type of either qualitative or quantitative metrics to look at to see whether we're doing it well?
I love it. Michael, I was talking to my 28-year-old nephew last week, and he's one of these guys where he shuts down work. He works 50 hours a week, and he's like, when I'm off, I don't answer my phone. I don't do anything. And I was like, imagine 15 years ago if you did that without a phone. Without a phone, he's like, and he just kind of looked at me and goes, what do you mean? I said, think about how often your phone, look at your usage time. Just think how phones have changed. Our cell phones have changed the world. He's like, what did you used to do? And I said, we used to go outside and exercise. We go hiking, we go biking.
That's right.
We play with the grandkids. He's like, really? I said, yeah, we go and help out a charity. We do.
That's right.
He looked at me like I was a box of rocks. Michael, great stuff. Great show. MFFB.org. MAFB.org. Check him out. Wonderful stuff. This is Mission Minded. We'll do it again next week. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, Tony.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.